Hello everyone, today we're going to talk about photographing big cats. And I'm not talking about Mr. Tinkles at home. I'm talking about the big fellas, lion and leopard and cheetah and so on. To be honest, you can apply these techniques to all predators and in fact other species. But we're going to look at the cats specifically because these are such a flagship species of Africa. So without further ado, this is photographing big cats. So the first thing we're going to talk about is quite similar to what we talked about in the big herbivores, about photographing quintessential elements of that particular species, things that define it. Now in cats, there's many things that define cats. And one of the biggest things is their tail. Lions have a black tuft of fur on the end of their tail. Leopards have a beautifully marked tail, same with cheetah. And they often use... Damn motorbikes. Man, I want one. They often use those tails to communicate. So having the tail in a good position helps define your subject. Rather have it visible, rather have it curled instead of hidden behind your subject. This is the case if you've taken a number of frames of a leopard, for example, walking towards you, and you need to choose between them. Choose the one in terms of the tail that has a tail curled out the side, and the same with lions. That tail is very distinctive of the species and helps distinguish them from others. So look out for good tail position. On top of that, we look at the other elements of these cats, things that are quite standard throughout all cats. The eyes, the ears, and the paws. All of these help tell a more powerful story. So when you've taken a row of images and you're looking for the best one, or if you're shooting a lion or a leopard or a cheetah walking along a ridge and you're waiting for the perfect moment, when it comes to paws, a paw that's up and moving off the ground tells a much more powerful story of movement than a paw that's on the ground. If the cat's moving but your frame has captured all the paws on the ground, it doesn't really look like it's moving. The story of movement isn't that powerful. If you're trying to tell a story of movement, is the one where the paw is up. That is significant of movement, and we can immediately see, and your viewer can immediately see that that cat's on the move. Now there's always a number of frames to choose from. It could be slightly forward, it could be slightly back, but I find the best place to have the paw is about midway, where it's still curled backwards but moving forwards, and that evokes the strongest story of movement, and that suggests movement much stronger than other positions of the paw. With the eyes and ears, it's all about engagement and confrontation. We want to feel that your subject's engaged with your viewer and your viewer's engaged with your subject. The subject doesn't necessarily have to be looking at the viewer or straight down the camera. It doesn't really have to, and with cats it's sometimes quite tough, but we want the viewer to feel engaged. And with the eyes and ears, it's much better to have the eyes open and looking as close towards the camera as possible. Sometimes better shots is looking slightly away, but they are looking in a particular direction. They're not looking down and you can't see where the eyes are looking. If you're choosing between a row of images and you're getting direct eye contact or something close to it in one frame, it's going to be much more powerful than the others. And it's the same with ears. With lions, big males, you can quite often not see their ears. They're hidden in the mane. But with leopards and cheetah, quite often their ears move. Leopards especially, one ear is often facing one way and one ear is facing the other way. They're always picking up on sounds around them. They stay very connected to what's going on around them. It's quite difficult sometimes to get both ears facing forward. But when you get a leopard looking right at you, perfect eye contact and one ear's forward, but one ear's back, that backward ear has so much negative power. It's showing that the leopard is actually distracted by something or giving some attention to something behind it. And so your viewer does the same thing. So you try and look for moments when eyes and ears are all facing the same direction and there's no split of attention or split of energy with one ear backwards or the eyes looking the wrong way. So eyes and ears are very important, along with paws and tails, to give them all in the right position. Now it's very rare that you get the tail flicking, you get the paw up, you get the eyes looking straight at you and the ears looking straight at you. Sometimes you're making do with 2 or 3 or one of those elements, but you do the best you can. And when that moment comes where all of them line up, you better be ready, because that is a beautiful image. Now, like with elephant, and in fact with most subjects, try to get a low angle as best as possible. This might be just reversing your Jeep into a depression or driving to a place where you're looking up at the cat. Cats are immense animals. They're amazing animals. They're glorious in every way. If you're looking straight down on it, you take away that glory from the cat, and the feeling will be evoked in your image at the end of the day. So try and get as low as possible. Now there's going to be various ways of doing this. In the wild, which is the only way you can do wildlife photography, this shit that happens in cages is not wildlife photography. I don't know what that is, but we're not going to go down that road. Not yet. But in wildlife photography, quite often you're limited to how low you can get. You can't just get out the Jeep with lions. Little do a lot of people know, a lion's not going to kill you, it's going to run away. They're inherently afraid of human beings most of the time. And if someone's that stupid to do that, it's probably better the lion does get rid of them. But again, let's not drift off course. The point is to get as low as possible. If you're in a Jeep, talk to your guide and ask him, is there a way to get a lower angle? Or look around for depressions, because that lower angle gives such emphasis to your subject and gives it the glory it deserves. And now with cats, especially with leopard and with cheetah, they have such beautiful patterns. Sometimes a lion's mane is full of textures and color, which means we don't necessarily have to have head and shoulders or full body shots. We can actually fill the frame with just the patterns on their body and can make a really beautiful image, especially if you're shooting for print. So don't be afraid of going in close, isolating just spots, just have leopard, or it's all leopard, it's only spots, or a lion's mane, just his mane and just his chin. Quintessential elements of a lion, it defines a male lion. So you can fill the frame with that and still have a powerful story. And then there's always room to think out the box with shooting the cats. You don't always have to have the cat facing you. You don't always have to have all the elements of a standard composition coming right. Think out the box, think abstract, think maybe all I need is one part of that animal that defines it in the frame. It could be the tail, it could be the points of the ears, it could be just its paw. Isolate features that are clearly lion or clearly leopard or clearly cheetah, and maybe that's all the image needs. So think abstract when you can, and think how you can create something different, because sometimes very powerful images are hidden in there. Now with portraiture, it's something we can apply to any live subject really, and with cats it's no different. This is about introducing your viewer to the character. Portraiture is all about the individual, or more than one. Portraiture doesn't have to have one in there, but it's got nothing really to do with the animal's habitat or its behavior. It's portraiture. It's simple. This is a lion. This is what it looks like. But you can still make portraiture incredibly beautiful. And you can go wide, you can go close. Portraiture is not confined to head and shoulders. It can be the full body with a bit of space, all the way up to just the face. Now with portraiture, this simple guideline is try to keep the eyes on the top line of the top line at the bottom of the top third. That's just a guideline, but in terms of portraiture and composition, it really helps, and it seldomly comes off that line. Get the eyes as close as possible. They don't always have to be exactly on it, but as close as possible or just above it works really, really well. Unless, obviously, if your subject is looking up, remember eyes cast a lot of weight, and you want that weight to fall into the frame. If the eyes are too close to the top of the frame, the weight's falling out of the frame. So you can move your composition down, and you can move the eyes below that top line. And sometimes you can go as far down as the bottom line, sometimes even lower. There's always exceptions. But if the animal's looking up, consider dropping the composition so there's a little bit more space to look into. Another thing to bear in mind with portraiture and cats, remember cats' heads are really big. Even a leopard and cheetah have got a very wide face, and a lot of people get stuck on f2.8 because they love that blurry, milky background. And if the animal's far enough away, it works beautifully. But remember, places like the Sabi Sands, East Africa, you can get really close. So if you shoot on f2.8 and that animal's head is turned slightly and your focus is even slightly off, the nose is going to be in focus and your eyes are going to be blurred. It's trash, it's going to the bin. And a strong portrait, most of the time, and a lot of people disregard this, means has all the details of the face evident. There's creative approaches where all we want is one eye in focus. But in portraiture specifically, we usually want the whole face and all of its important features to be in focus. So be wary of f2.8. Shoot on f5, 6, sometimes 6.3. Know what the sweet spot is in your aperture. Sometimes I've shot portraiture on f10 to get the paw all the way to the head and the eyes and the ears all in focus. I wanted all those details to be evident. So bear in mind that very wide open apertures, small f-stop values, can be detrimental to portraiture, and you might be disappointed when you realize one eye is blurred, or the nose is blurred, or the ears are blurred, or the paw in front of that cat is blurred when you could have had it in focus. So be wary of f2.8. Another thing to look out for, and this is one of my favorite approaches to cat photography, is look out for moments of contact, moments of interaction between species. It might be quite difficult to predict this. Ask a guide, ask a local. Try your best to find out information of when this is going to happen. But there's sometimes where it's really easy, where cubs and lionesses come together. They're always touching, they communicate through rubbing their cheeks together and strengthen their bonds. Those moments are so powerful, it's something we can relate to. Anything that the viewer can relate to is something that's going to be very powerful. And if you can capture that image and make sure that point of contact is exactly what the viewer finds, cancel out any other distractions, you're going to have a very powerful image. And even outside of that, male lions often come together. Leopard come together, they're always connecting with each other. It's a common way in which cats communicate. So look out for those points of contact. because there's potential in there for some of the best big cat images you'll ever take. Another aspect you must keep in mind when shooting the big cats, you're going to find them on the move, and their posture and the direction of their body casts a lot of weight, so you need to give them room to move. Depending on how strong that direction is, you can compose them with regards to the rule of thirds or the phi grid. Either way, the animal needs space to move into. It's something we apply to many genres of photography, but with big cats, it's very important because they evoke such a strong feeling of movement. You have to have that space for them to move into. What sometimes happens is you have the body facing one way and the head facing the other way. You've got conflicting directions of energy. The body's pushing energy one way, the face is pushing energy the other way. To simplify this situation that might seem complicated, the face and eyes will always cast more weight and more energy than the body itself. It's the thing that we connect with first when we look at an image. If the body's facing one way and the face is facing another way, always give room to the direction the face is looking in rather than the body, because they're just sending more weight than the body in a particular direction. Another thing to look out for, now again, these are guidelines, we don't often have the option, but where you can move and adjust your angle, look for clean picture planes. The picture planes are what hold your subject at the end of the day. If they're messy and there's hundreds of them, a lion and a leopard and a cheetah are designed to be camouflage. They will be hidden in the frame. So where you can, move around, change your angle. If you're looking down at a lion in the grass, you might hardly be able to notice it because it's designed to hide in the grass. So drive back and look for a lower angle and create that depth of field. Blur away the grass, blur away the background, allow some blue sky, and clean the picture planes up, and you've got a beautiful, beautiful picture. And the same goes for leopard. Leopard are designed to hide in the thick bush. So if one's hiding in a bush, you're probably not going to be able to see it, which means your viewer's not going to be able to see it. So do your best to clean up the picture plane. Drive away, look for a gap, try and predict where the leopard's going to go, and wait for that moment. If he's walking through thick bush and you're just getting lots of busy photographs and you're not happy, look where the leopard's going. There might be a fallen tree. Often leopard will jump on the tree. There might be a rocky outcrop. Cut ahead and get the leopard in a clean scene with clean picture planes, because that one great image is worth more than all the shit that you took before it. So predict, move, and try and get the best picture. And it's sometimes as easy as looking at the thick bush and going, there's a gap of grass coming up with no bush in it. The leopard's going to be in a clean shot for, could be a second, could be 2 seconds, but in that 2 seconds is the best image you're going to get of that leopard. So move and clean the picture planes up. It's so important. Another thing that I love doing with the big cats is including the habitat around them, including the environment. Quite often this helps define a cat and is an important part of a leopard's story, or a lion's, or a cheetah's. So including a bit of habitat in a careful way that conforms with your composition and isn't too busy can produce some of the most powerful images, sometimes much more powerful than portraiture and just having the cat fill the frame. It's a little bit more difficult to do because now you've got more elements to organize and to compose, but it can really make a beautiful image. A leopard in a tree or in a forest, that is part of what a leopard does. It tells a story of a place, it's a bigger picture. Or a leopard on rocks. A leopard loves rocks. This again tells a story of a leopard's life more than it tells a story of just a leopard, which can make a beautiful picture. Or lions on the Great Plains. This is where the fame of lions began, in East Africa on the Great Plains. This is where they were first heard of and where some of the biggest populations of lion exist. So shooting them in a bit of environment and allowing a bit of environment in, instead of going in too close, can create a much more powerful image. And the same goes for leopard in the thick bush. Instead of going close and trying to cut out all the bush that you think is destroying the image and making the leopard hard to find, maybe making a leopard hard to find is exactly what you want to do. So let the bush in, and hopefully there's enough color contrast and other elements that help your viewer find the subject. And now you've taken them on a story about a leopard's habitat and its home, and you've created a very powerful image. We're also going to talk about framing cats. Now, framing anything really works, but with cats, it's really something to look out for, because if you can frame a cat in branches or the bushes above it or through the gap of 2 trees, you really are creating a strong image, and that can apply to many genres of photography. But if you can accomplish it with cats, you've created something really beautiful. So instead of looking for the cleanest scene and waiting for a leopard to walk through the grassy plains and you've got a nice clean shot, maybe use the bush to make a frame, because if you pull it off, you'll come out with something stunning. The last thing I want to talk about is the high key approach. We've talked about this before. Having your subject on a white canvas background. Now, obviously, you can't really do this with a camera, but you can build a strong foundation to a very beautiful high key image. Cats, especially in the heat of the day, will often go to the shade. In fact, probably 80% of the time we view cats, they are in the shade. And a lot of the time photographers put their camera down, and sometimes you have to. If the lion or leopard is lying flat with their head in the grass, there's not much you can get. But if their head's up and they're in the shadow and everything around them is bright, there actually is a great opportunity here to create a high key image, purposefully overexposing the image, and with a little bit of creative post-processing you can clean up that background and have beautiful profiles of these cats on a beautiful white canvas, and they make exquisite prints and are a very rewarding way of creating art. So don't forget about high key, and that's it for Big Cats. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you for the next one.